How be how beautiful is that? Thank you, Alice. Uh, I remember when I first came to this meeting many years ago when it started in the pandemic, and how revitalizing and what a breath of fresh air it was. So it's good to be here. It's good to be back. I'm glad you guys are going strong. Um, I want to say welcome to anybody who's new or returning. And if for any reason you have not as yet found the answer to your problem, um, it's in our book, it's in our literature, but it's about having our own personal relationship with it. So I am going to share on this topic, and I think what I'd like to do is just ask each one of your hearts and minds, just ask you, you know, have you increasingly found a peace of mind which can stand firm in the face of difficult circumstances? Have you found that? Has that promise come true for you? And, I think what I'm going to talk about is a little bit about how I have found that, um, you know, that I've found it and that there has been um, work, effort, like a relationship, a good, healthy relationship to keep that connection juicy and vibrant and alive and workable in my life, evergreen. And I think I want to share with you a little bit about um, when that connection, like a cataract growing over the eye, it gets dull, it gets fuzzy, it gets dim. Um, and I'm finding that I'm not facing the difficulty of life on life's terms with grace, you know, and how um, I have come to understand um, spiritual growth and have gotten to know myself as a spiritual believer. I don't know how many of you have met yourself, your personality as a spiritual believer. There's a part of Alcoholics Anonymous, and again, my name is Sydney. I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date is January 12th, 1985. So I've had some pretty good days, long days of practice. This has been a practice. I am the Kobe of step 11. I just do work. I've just been doing work. I've been throwing up, those free throws, and I've been coming into the gym early, and I've been staying way late, and I've been looking at tape, and I've been looking at other folks, and not trying to play anybody else's game here, but really knowing that to do with all of my heart the best job I can at living authentically as Sydney, as a sober alcoholic woman, and doing that poorly is better than trying to be Alice or John or Calvin or Ali or anybody else very well. There's a line in our big book when we're taking folks through. It's this beautiful line on page and it's around page 19, page 20, where it asks us, given this incredible gift of being separated from alcohol, and been given this new way of life and been given access to a power that not only has solved this alcohol problem, but every problem in my life, how am I going to best represent that? How am I going to it says basically, how do I want to share this thing that I've been given? And this is a beautiful question to ask, and all I can do is share with you what has set me free. That's all I can do, is share with you what has set me free. So hopefully that's what I'll do. Let me back up to go a little bit forward, if you don't mind. Have any of you checked out this old school book, Stools and Bottles? If you haven't picked this up, please go to Grapevine, aagrapevine.org. Order this. Get this back in rotation. This book right here, if you've been around a long time and you've lost your mojo, you ain't juicy anymore, get this one going. Stools and Bottles is really beautiful. And my sponsor has asked me to pick this up lately, and I'm just on page 39. It says successful AA members are those who sacrifice their reservations. Their reservations of what? Of spiritual help, that we need spiritual help. So sacrifice their reservations upon the altar of sobriety and lose themselves in 12-step living. And then he says this that's so cool. There is a certain spiritual illness in alcoholism. Step 3 gives a solution for its treatment. This is a simple solution, yet for some, it is quite difficult. Its success lies in our willingness to discipline our minds with spiritual thinking. Indifference and prejudice are the chief barriers to success. Alcoholic minds rebel against the surrender which this step suggests. So this gets really deep. Its success lies in my willingness to discipline my mind on spiritual thinking. You know, so much is rumination, so much is, I want to explain it to you again, so much is that motherfucker, so much is, you know, this inside dialogue, this chatter all the time. It's called auditory thinking, you know. So much is, my voice, somehow I'm being infringed upon. And I find that very interesting. Am I living in man's world, or this man-made world, in the human world, in the relative world, or am I living in the ultimate world? Am I living in the spiritual realm? Have I realized that I will never find the justice, peace, power, and purpose and effectiveness that I crave in this world? I will never find it. But can I train my mind? Can I train my mind first and foremost to unlearn everything that I have learned that makes me thirsty, that makes picking up seem like it's an option, or to make it a somehow romanticized notion of relief, or that leads me to believe that a very, very short-lived moment of is somehow victory, right? Am I training myself to realize that no matter how I explain it, no matter what crystals I wear, no matter what my goal weight is, no matter if I have the degree behind my name or not, if I get that money in the bank, if I get laid just right, if I go and can do all the things that are of this man-made existence, that is not going to quench that place from which thirst, that I gotta take the edge off. Why do I have to take the edge off? Because I don't like reality as it is. See, that's the spiritual malady. I'm saying that there's something wrong with the way life is handed to me, meeting me. And I am saying that there's another form that this should take, and that it needs to come from outside of me. This is basically this sensitiveness of me as an alcoholic. So Stools and Bottles, and then here's another one, emotional sobriety, the next frontier. You know, Bill loved us, and he loved us in that way that he totally understood who we were. And listen to how long, and this was from 1958. He says, I think that many oldsters who have put our AA booze cure to severe but successful tests still find they often lack emotional sobriety. Perhaps they will be the spearhead for the next major development in AA. That's you and your group. That is what you are doing, and I thank you for that. The development of much more real maturity and balance, which is to say humility, in our relationships with ourselves, with our fellows, and with God. Those adolescent urges that so many of us have for top approval, perfect security, perfect romance, urges quite appropriate to age 17. Isn't he kind? I'm around 8. I'm actually around 8 years old, you guys. And prove to be the impossible way of life when we are at age 47 or 57 or 67 or 73. And again, when we look at these devices, they're telling us all the things we should have and how we should have it and the list of tasks we can do to achieve it. But it never seems to really get as deep as cocaine and tequila did, does it? It doesn't seem to reach that spiritual, awakening spot. I'll read this and then I'll jump into my own story. He said, "Suddenly I realized what the matter was. My basic flaw had always been dependence, almost absolute dependence, on people or circumstances to supply me with prestige, security, and the like. Failing to get these things according to my perfectionist dreams and specifications, I had fought for them. And when I failed and defeat came, so did depression." What gets in the way of trusting and relying in God, what gets in the way of obedience to a spiritual daily practice, a daily looking, a daily seeking, what gets in the way of snapping into a plan of recovery that takes my relationship into consideration with God as the first and foremost relationship, not the crisis one, not the keep the hope alive one. I was reading something in a spiritual book that said, let go of hope. Hope is a setup for disappointment, because hope is comparing you today and God today to something that happened in the past or something that should happen in the future. And I went, okay, now we're talking. A living God consciousness and immediate, right here, quickening God. Don't have to earn it. Don't have to do nothing. It is as close as my breath. It is as deep as the color of my eyes. It is as intimate as my genetic code. That kind of presence, right? But I'm going to say this, what gets in the way of that is fear. Maybe you're still driven by 100 forms of fear. Teresa, let's tell them there's only 3. There's only 3. I would even say there's only 1, but we're not ready for that discussion yet. If you're driven by 100 forms of fear, for me, that's just too complicated. My sponsor said, boil it down to 3 so you can track those in your daily experience, so you can have something to ask God to remove and watch if God removes it and track what happens with, so you can repeat it, so that you can actually share it with someone else. If it's 100 forms, I can't use it, right? So I had to get down to 3. Fear of pain, fear of being wretched, worse than unworthy, and fear of not belonging. But even if you want to boil all those down, why is it that I have the relationship with alcohol that I do? And I love this because I'm trying to get safe. Think about that one. Let's eradicate all the bullshit about I'm broken, I'm fucked up, that let's get rid of all of that. Like, I love how people start talking about alcoholism like it's a preferred personality. I don't want to be an alcoholic. I still don't want to be an alcoholic. What's important about me is that I have conceded to my innermost self that I am one. I'm not grateful to be an alcoholic. That's like saying I'm grateful for multiple sclerosis or cancer. I'm not. I'm grateful to have accepted to my innermost self that I am one, and then try all of these 36 principles that you all say work for someone like me to the best of my ability. That's what I'm grateful for. I'm grateful for you and your time, but I am not grateful to be an alcoholic. This is not something I chose. And I think that when we pull off of that and not turn it into like an identity, this is an affliction. This is something that happened outside of me. And the more that I keep that, the more I find 40 years in the game that I can stay nimble enough to work with it. If it's my personality, there's something I'm holding on to. There's something I'm taking as mine, which means that I've again got leverage, and now the self is back. The ego has regenerated. Now Sid's doing something with the diagnosis of alcoholism that's not what we intended. But so this fear in Bill's grapevine from, good grief, I think this is 1965. If you haven't read this old stuff, it's so beautiful. He says, therefore, the problem of resolving fear has two aspects. We shall have to try for all the freedom from fear that is possible for us to attain. Then we shall need to find both the courage and grace to deal constructively with whatever fears remain. So step 12 for me, the mining, the culling, the returning to it again and again, the daily practice of it, the being hot with it, cold with it, neutral with it, coming back to it, trying something different, checking that out for 30, 60, 90 days, trying something else, has really been about developing and staying so blanketed, like one of those, who, if you guys have pets, you've put a thunder coat on your cat, not your cat, your dog, or one of those weighted blankets for soothing. The grace. I need the grace of a power greater than myself to get through this beautiful and wildly scary life of ours. I need grace, and I need the courage to be taught to apply the principles of recovery to what is going on with me at every phase of my development. I need to snap in to recovery. I can't think, oh, this thing happening with menopause, that's something else, or this thing happening with my kid, oh, that's something else, or this thing happening with my 92-year-old mom, it's something else. None of it is something else. All of it, for me personally, is about, it says, this beautiful line, do you guys remember this one, where it says, people sense, most of us sense is a very spiritual word, fourth dimension, that real tolerance of other people's shortcomings and viewpoints and a respect for their opinions are attitudes which make us more useful to others. To do what? To help people get sober, get free, find emotional sobriety. And it says, our sober lives, my constant thought of others and how I may help meet their needs. How can I do that? With pain, discord, family dynamics, illness. How can I do that? Lost a job, didn't get the job. Like, there are things in life that come up, and there can be an old threadbare idea of relying on a drink or a drug, something outside of myself, to take away that pain, right? But in sobriety and not drinking, what I can do is rely on judging, criticizing, projecting blame on others to get through the rough times. When I was married, my husband said to me, Hey, Sid, why is it that when you have a problem, we have a problem? We're okay. Man, that was graduate level shit. I didn't get that. But this is what prayer and meditation have helped me do. So when we look at this incredible line, on 104, is it that I'm increasingly, as time goes on, the longer I stay sober, and not I have to have so much time, but the longer I keep trying to deepen this perspective of step 11, seeking, looking for the answers, the courage, the wisdom, the repair, the solution in spiritual terms, in spiritual thinking, in spiritual life. The more and more I do that, am I finding that there is more and more ease, more and more grace. There's already a kind of robust courage to deal with the difficulties of life. That has to be a litmus test question for all of us that we really should be speaking from the podium about, that we really should be saying to our sponsees, right? Am I enjoying the satisfactions of dealing with the realities of life? Trying to get the heat off, y'all. I didn't know I was signing up for the deepest spiritual program and spiritual life. I had no idea. But what the fuck are you constantly complaining about on these meetings? What's going on, people? I'm not judging you. I'm asking us a question. I had to ask myself this question. How am I experiencing freedom? What am I looking with and what am I looking through? It must be the spiritual terms. I need to grow in depth and complexity and understanding of spiritual terms. And one of the ways is prayer is speaking to God. Meditation is listening to God. And I need to ask God, higher power, universal law, please use the word that is right for you to reveal God's will to me. But check it out. I gotta then do what the download says. See, that's also the rub with step 11, right? I have to tell you many times, and I just said this today, I have said, if God would ever come down here like a man, I would ask and I would win. Because God's got jokes, right? I'm not always cool with the assignment. But trust and believe, not cool with the assignment. And there are people who believe I'm co-creating with God. Yeah, I don't know about that. There's a lot of things I am asked to do that I'm like, oh, dude, God, really? Come on now, ask Alice, ask Dave, ask Kelly. I don't want to do that. And I've had to learn here that as a result of being with you all, as a result of understanding what I suffer from, what my condition is, whose I am, what I stand for, and what I'm willing to die for, that sometimes, often, I've heard, girl, you the best I got. I need you to get in there. I need you in there. So there's this beautiful line on 97 in the 12 and 12. And step 11 can be as simple as this, the why. If you're not into the courage, if you're not into the grace, if you're not into meeting the difficulties of life easier and easier, if you're not into the God concept, if you're not into I don't want to bow down, here's the one that I love. It says, those of us who have come to make regular use of prayer understand that we would no more do without it than we would refuse air, food, or sunshine. When we turn away from meditation and prayer, we likewise deprive our minds, our emotions, and our intuitions of vitally needed support. As the body can fail its purpose for lack of nourishment, so can the soul. So we all need, isn't this beautiful? The light of God's reality, the nourishment of God's strength. And here's that word again, and the atmosphere of God's grace. Rest. I need rest. I need refuge. I have to pull away from this incredibly complex, chaotic world of ours and find stillness, get quiet, and not that kind of stillness where I'm just whirling with my own thoughts. Not that kind of stillness or retreat where I'm fervently praying, so much so that my lips are moving, and I'm rocking back and forth praying for an outcome. And I don't mean an outcome for things to go my way. I'm talking about that I have the strength or the ability to deal with something on life's terms. Do you know that kind of prayer? Help me get right size. Help me be there. Help me do thy will. Thy will, not mine, be done. Don't let me fuck this up. I just want to do that kind of thing. That plea for capacity and readiness and effectiveness. See, I've learned that after a while, that's even self-reliant. Because why don't I believe? Why don't I believe like I know gravity, like I know the sun's coming up tomorrow? Like, why don't I believe that God will make me fit and already has? That's an interesting one. It says there's a direct linkage among self-examination, meditation, and prayer. Taken separately, these practices can bring much relief and benefit. But when they are logically related and interwoven, here's what I want. The result is an unshakable foundation for life. He doesn't say for sobriety. He doesn't say for not drinking. He doesn't say for being happy. He says for life. So for me, step 11 is really the key to growth, right? The other steps are maintenance and purification. But step 11 is the one that keeps me growing. And it is, I will tell you, I think the most difficult, particularly when we go back to that first thing I read where, he says that its success lies on my willingness to discipline my mind with spiritual thinking. The default is to go back into the justifications. The default is to go back into dissecting and analyze something. The defect is to go back into defensiveness. The defect is to go back into fantasy. The defect is, but that is not spiritual thinking. And so really feeling into what spiritual thinking is. How much time do I have? What is it, about 12 minutes? Am I about right?
You got about 6 minutes, Sydney.
Oh,
You got 2 more hours.
okay. So I think the thing that has been most important for me is the courage. Everybody loves the serenity prayer, God grant me the serenity. But I tried for a year only focusing on one part of the serenity prayer, and it was, and the courage to change the things I can. And this was the old school days when we would write things in our hand, and I would look at it all throughout the day before we had these contraptions. And every time something moved across the spirit, every time a tightness came in, every time a knee jerk, every time a kind of adverse big feeling came in, I would say, courage. Can you grant me the courage? I'm calling on courage to take a different action, a different tact, to take a contrary action. Because I understood in the early days that a spiritual life, a spiritual experience manifested itself in paradox, right? I couldn't stand my mother. What you all asked me to do was call her for 15 minutes once a week, every single day, at the same time, every single week. I told you that I was angry with my mother and that she frightened me, and you'd say, beautiful, go get her a Mother's Day card. When's her birthday, send her a birthday card. I told you that I couldn't be in a room with her alone, and you said, wonderful, extend that conversation to 30 minutes. I want you to read People magazine, Reader's Digest, and the front cover of the Los Angeles Times. You will never speak about yourself. You will be light and polite, and you will ask her how she is. You will watch the clock for 20 minutes. When you get to 17 minutes, start to close the conversation. All these things and paradoxes, right? I'm afraid of someone, I hate them, and you ask me to look at my own part of the relationship and make amends for the harm that I've done, totally erasing who and what they were. So I could see in the early days that spiritual terms were about paradox. But as we stay here long enough and we clean house and we get current, some other kind of relationship has to develop. One where I experience grace, one where the sense of courage is with me, one where stability becomes my companion, no matter what is going on in front of me, and one where when I am outmatched or cannot, thank you, or cannot find my way through something, that I no longer have to be in fear or slide into anxiety, because I've had days and weeks and months and years of seeing God doing for me what I cannot do for myself. But what has had to happen so that that can happen quicker? I've had to clear the channel. Right? I have to get the disturbances out of the way. How do I do that? I have to set out time on a daily basis. Some of us believe time in the morning, and the morning is a very powerful time, 45 minutes to an hour, and some time in the evening, 15, 20, 30 minutes before going to bed. And it's bookends. It's about meeting God on God's terms, in terms that I understand, that come up and out of me through the experiences of my life. Does that make sense? So somebody else's spiritual practice may or may not work for you. Maybe there are spiritual practices that have worked, but now they're threadbare and they don't have the nourishing quality to them. But we seek to improve the conscious contact with this higher power that we have established in the front part of the steps, that got us sober, that we had in the second step experience, that we had in the third step, the fourth step, the fifth step with someone listening, the sixth step where we can look the world in the eyes, the seventh, the eighth step when it becomes objectionable, that's still God consciousness. The ninth step when we go out and make those amends and absolutely become shed, become absolutely free. And 10, when we're walking in conscious contact and companionship. And 11, here we are again, growing this relationship. I'm going to ask you another question, and this is for your answer only. Do you believe, are you staying sober on the God that got you here? See, I can't. I cannot stay sober on the God that got me here. And trust and believe, God doesn't change. It's about this. It's about expanding and enlarging. Not only the ability to understand, and hear me, understand for me means to bear the burden of respect and responsiveness to something that is not me. Understand. I'm standing under something, is to bear the burden of. respect and responsiveness to something that is not me. It can be someone else. When I say I understand God, understand the terms. It's not always language. It's definitely not black and white. It's definitely not in my timing. There's this way, good luck, bad luck, who knows? Some of us have experienced some really horrific things, thought it was the end of us, and then saw later on they call it a silver lining, some gold thread of beauty, capacity, grace, some crazy gift that came out of the obliteration of everything that I had been holding up and working on and holding on to. This mystery, this divine sense of life calling to itself, this incredible way that, security and nimbleness and wisdom and the capacity to meet difficulty becomes not only an asset, but it becomes a touchstone for others to then regulate themselves with. Did you know that's who you were going to become? Did you know that your sobriety would bring emotional sobriety to you and to those around you? If in your drunkenness and addiction, you were the tornado roaring through the lives of others, baby girl, baby boy, baby they, don't you know that now you have the potential to bring emotional stability and sobriety to everyone who comes in contact with you? Grace, elegance or beauty of form, manner or action, a pleasing or attractive quality or endowment, favor or goodwill. Step 11 is something that I have to keep working at. I want to say this and then I'll be quiet. Fear gets in the way. Fear gets in the way. My sobriety depends on the maintenance of my spiritual condition. And it doesn't matter if I feel good in meditation or not. It doesn't matter if I come out of it and I'm calm and levitating 3 feet off the ground. It doesn't matter if I come out of meditation and prayer and I've got every answer to every question. I have seen that what meditation does is the most delicious gift that I don't want any of you to miss. It puts me in touch with the essence of my true self. It puts me in touch with the inner essence that is deathless, timeless, untouched by human foolishness. And that allows me to remember what? Forgiveness. Forgive them. Forgive the clumsiness of it, the cruelty of it. Forgive the hack job of it. Forgive. Forgive it. Because there is this undisturbed, constructive imagination that is in my DNA, that is in your DNA, that is beyond language, that spiritual living has helped me build a companionship with. This body is changing. It will leave me. But there is an essence of Sydney that will go on. I don't want to miss purifying this being to join the highest of collection of energies to keep helping life move forward in the most loving and tender ways. This being human is very challenging. This being an alcoholic human is challenging, but we have the most beautiful, non-elitist, accessible, daily program to spiritual development that I've ever seen. And I've been to Nepal, I've been to India, I've been to the Vatican. And those are wonderful and lovely places. But their message never would have hit my heart if you all hadn't taken the garbage out of my head. Calming the mind, taming the mind, it is the only way I have been able to search, identify, and be obedient to God's will. And give me the grace and the poise and I don't like that word, and the capacity to actually follow an assignment that is about our greatest liberation. So thank you for letting me share.
Sydney, thank you. Sydney, thank you for a beautiful talk. And I know that John will post how to get access to the recording so that people can listen to that again. We only have time for maybe 3 questions, maybe 4. Bill, please come on in.
My hand accidentally popped up, but I will say something. Oh my God, Sydney, you're beautiful. I called Alice at 5 o'clock. I said, "Where's my flyer?" And she sent it. And so something told me to be here. I like what you said. If God came down in the human form, you'd have a battle and you'd win. Because Voltaire said, God made man in his image and likeness, and man being the gentleman has returned a favor. Why do I feel the need to make God into a potato head so I could relate rather than to just accept, like you said? I like that responsiveness. Others, so much. I sent you a chat. If you please send your number. God bless. Thank you, Alice.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Lorraine, come on in.
Real quick. 3 years ago, I came on this meeting for the first time, and you were the speaker, Sydney. And I was kind of brand new, and I had a brand new book that didn't have any marks in it at all. And you sent me to page 86 and told me about this little thing called On Awakening. And the next morning, I picked up my book, and that's what I've been doing every morning since. And you told me I could be recovered. You told me the book promises me that I could be recovered from this illness. And I have done my whole sobriety knowing that and not feeling broken and knowing that I could get recovery because of you carrying the message that night like that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yvette, my friend, please come in.
Hi, Alice. Hi, everybody. Hi, Yvette, alcoholic. Sydney. Oh my gosh, that was such an amazing share. Alice, I think, described it as poetry or something, and it was like soothing and amazingly deep, and I loved it. So thank you so much. My question is, you had said you had narrowed down the 100 forms of fear to 3, and I ran to get a pen and paper so I could write them down, and I got fear of pain, and I think fear of not belonging. But can you just remind us what you said the 3 fears were narrowed down?
Thank you, Yvette. I'm happy to, and I encourage you to get your 3 fears out of your 3rd column extended or your 4th column extended, because that's where my fears came from, out of that fear inventory, and we boil them down. But mine are fear of belonging, fear of pain, and fear of being wretched, something far worse than unworthy, being deemed invaluable from a higher source. So
thank you, Sydney. Tim, come on in.
Thank you, Sydney. Wonderful share. The question I had is, from a human perspective, how can we satisfy the spiritual yearning that we all have? I mean, when we're looking for the gratification of the human world, the now, the today, it's the only thing that I really know. And I mean, we talk about like the dark night of the soul. It seems like it's the dark life of my soul. It's just an ongoing thing. So is the journey like all that we really have?
I love your question. You've got maybe 4 in there. So tell me the one you really want me to answer. You're muted, Tim. One more time. Come on in. You muted yourself again.
All right, there I am.
Yeah.
Just the journey. I mean, it seems like our life is just this journey. We have this yearning, looking for that beyond us.
Yeah.
And the only satisfaction I can feel is as a human being. How do I get to where we're going, I guess?
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for that. I don't know that everybody has a yearning. I don't know that. I don't know that. What I think, if I can answer you, what I think I've understood is that humans are trying to make meaning of life, of change, of unsafety, of lack of control. There's in all of the things that we kind of read and can get on these screens that sell us, $630 trillion industry of how you can stay safe. I think many of us can get distracted and lost on that. Some of us have life events that wake us up from that kind of information, and it becomes unsatisfactory. And then we go, what else is there? And I'm going to share this and then I'll be quiet. Is it that we are seeking God or that God is seeking us? The most important thing I think I have learned in my life is that God needs me, my hands, my eyes, my voice, my comportment, my deportment, because God works through people. So what I feel that I'm doing here is preparing myself, purifying myself, and not to be perfect. Purifying means, am I willing to look at that which keeps getting me in trouble with being my highest self? Am I willing to engage in the process of recovery with those attitudes, behaviors, things that are defeating me, blocking me? And that, I think, regardless of whether we ever get there, as you say, the doing it is where the value is. The doing it is where the virtue is. I'm so grateful that I'm trying every day to be the best version of myself than what I was trying to do just to survive. I think we already are heaven. We already are evolved. We just need to remind each other.
Thank you, Sydney. Pat, you get the last question for the evening.
Thank you, Alice. I'm Pat Alcoholic. And Sydney, truly, language of the heart. Boy, you were speaking it. My question is, you made a statement about hope. And
Yeah.
I think I heard you say that hope is a setup for disappointment.
Yeah.
Can you say more?
Yeah, and I know that that's provocative and very jarring, and it's something for each of us to test. And I think it's, again, part of getting to know ourselves as our personalities as spiritual believer, and what is true freedom. Hope is, in order to have hope, I've got to have something that I'm comparing this moment to. I'm hoping for a better outcome. I'm hoping for something not to happen. I'm hoping for, and what I'm actually saying is who and what I am right now is not what's okay or needed. And I think the God that I want in my life is absolutely, undeniably valuing me, engaging with me, loving me, supporting me right now. Cancer, no cancer, married, not married, employed, not employed, sober, not sober, enlightened, not enlightened, goal weight, not goal weight. I don't think anymore that I've got to earn this love of God. And I think that's what keeps us drinking and using. So hope is another funny form. It can be. If it's not for you, that's all right. It's just what I've come to, of saying Sid's not okay. This life she's living is not okay. Rather than the motherfucking gift it is. You know how outrageous it is that we are alive right now, today? Today! You know how outrageous it is, not that you didn't drink today, but I didn't want to drink today. I didn't want to. I could never give myself that. What would happen if we sat in a spiritual seat from that energy instead of a looking or an expecting or a comparing? I was taught God is in the present moment. That's the only place God is. Hope takes me a little bit out from that.
So, Sydney, you and I have a relationship, and I have so much that I want to ask you for the benefit of the people, but we're out of time, and I'm a little heartbroken about that. I really am. So, folks, please know that this recording is available for us to listen again. And Sydney, I love you. I love you.